My next story, actually, I found in two places. You can find it in Peace Tales by Margaret Reed MacDonald. You can also find it in another book that I just discovered called Rhinos and Raspberries. And this is the story of old Joe the Carpenter. And the Carpenter. Old Joe and the Carpenter, I should say. Old Joe was a farmer who lived somewhere outside of town. He was by himself, and so was his neighbor, another farmer. They had both married, settled on the farms, raised their children. The children had moved away, and sadly their wives had passed on. And so both these men were by themselves. And they got on, they helped each other out, until this one day when a calf was on Joe's property. Now, Joe claimed it was his calf. His neighbor claimed it was his calf. Both of these men had been farming long enough that really one calf should not have made a difference. And a calf is a baby cow or bull. That's a calf. But these two men got really angry with each other. And at just about this point, when it looked like maybe they were always going to stay really angry at each other, at just about this point, a young woman knocked on old Joe's door. She knocked on old Joe's door and asked Joe if he had any carpentry work that needed doing. She was a carpenter. And in those days, people who had a trade would travel and just get their room and board by doing work for people on the way. And this young woman was asking Joe if he had any carpenter work that needed doing. And he did. He said, yes, indeed. He said, you see that stream that comes down between my property and that fool that lives on the other side? Well, that stream never used to be there. But after this argument about this calf, that fool went up to his upper pond, hooked up his tractor and plow, and pulled a stream bed all the way down from the upper pond all the way down to the road. So he's going to put a stream between us. Well, I want to put a fence there too. So you go right on ahead and start. I'll go into town and get extra lumber. I want a great big fence right along the side of that stream so I don't even have to look at that fool. Well, the carpenter agreed to do it, and Joe went to town and got the lumber, and then decided that he had some errands to run and he would just leave her to work on the fence while she went and got this all done for him. So Joe left and was running errands, and he came back. He didn't see a fence. He saw the carpenter, and as he walked towards her, his mouth, his jaw could have hit the floor, because what he saw was not a fence. It was this beautifully constructed bridge over the stream. It had railings, the wood had been turned and put together so beautifully that you just wanted to walk up to this bridge and walk onto it and feel the wood and look at the stream. You've seen bridges like that before. And that's what Joe was kind of doing in the middle about being flabbergasted about not having the wall that he paid for. Well, all right. He stood looking at the stream, and then he heard a noise from the other side of the stream. His neighbor was coming down. He came up across the bridge with his hand out, and he said, Joe, I'm so sorry about that whole thing with the calf. I'm so sorry about being stupid about this stream. I just want to be your good neighbor again. And the men shook hands right there in the middle of that bridge. And that's the moment when their feud just fell apart. There was really nothing to it. Joe felt so relieved. He felt happier than he'd felt in days. And he turned to the young carpenter and said, "Now, would you like to stay on, young lady, for a while? I have other jobs that a carpenter could do." The young woman smiled at him and shook her head, and she said, "Well, no, sir. You see, I need to keep moving on. I have other bridges to build." And that's the story about Old Joe and the Carpenter.